The night was unusually quiet in Odeshi Street, that kind of silence that made even the hum of the transformer sound loud. It was the silence before the story that would change Madame Chica's life forever. She lived in a face me, I face you compound with 10 other families, the kind of place where secrets didn't last a day, and gossip traveled faster than light. But in that compound, Madame Chica's name was always on people's lips, for the wrong reasons. They called her that barren woman. They whispered that at her age over 50 she had no child to call her own. Some were not content with just whispers. They mocked her openly. They would cradle their babies on the corridor and laugh in a way that stabbed her heart. Better go born your own picking before you send mine go buy pure water for you. One woman would shout if Madame Chica did send her child on an errand. Some would hiss loudly as she passed, holding their children closer, as if her very presence could steal their fertility. It hurt. Every time it hurt. Madame Chica would sometimes hide inside her small, dimly lit room, fall on her knees, and beg Godfather, even if it's just one child before I die, let me hold my own. Her husband, Sunday, was a mechanic. He owned a small, battered workshop beside the old rail line, a place filled with the smell of engine oil and the clanging of tools. He wasn't a rich man, but he was patient and loving. When she cried, he would hold her hands and pray. When people insulted her, he would tell her, "Let them talk. They don't feed us. Our story is not over yet." During the day, Madame Chica ran her roadside food business suite, smoky jollof rice and roasted chicken that drew customers from nearby offices and Okada riders, who swore no one's rice tasted like hers. But her success in business only seemed to fuel the gossip. One afternoon, while shopping for tomatoes and peppers in the market, she overheard two women getting their hair braided at a roadside stall. They didn't know she was listening. "Look at her," one of them sneered, nodding towards Madame Chica. "She's over 50 and childless, yet she still do business like say she be small girl. She should be sleeping in church begging God, not selling rice." Another voice joined in. "Maybe she's a witch. She has eaten her children in her coven. All this roadside food sellers, you don't know what they put inside the food." They both laughed loud, carefree laughter, while the braider tugged at their hair. The words cut deep, sharper than a knife. She stood there frozen, tomatoes in hand, heart pounding. That night, she told her husband about what she had heard. He sighed, lying back on the thin mattress in their room. "You should be used to such by now," he said quietly. "Let them keep talking. It's their business. I just want to sleep, please." He turned to the wall, and within minutes, his breathing was deep and steady. But Madame Chica could not sleep. The words replayed in her head, each one an echo in the darkness. Which barren, eaten her children in the coven. She blinked hard, forcing back the tears, but the pain sat heavy in her chest. It was then she heard it. At first she thought it was a faint, weak sound coming from outside. Then it came again. A cry. A baby's cry. Her heart skipped out. She sat up immediately, her heart pounding. She turned to her husband and shook him lightly. Sunday, wake up. Do you hear that?" He groaned, pulling the blanket over his head. "Chica, please. It's midnight. Maybe some neighbor's child." But Madame Chica was certain it was coming from outside. She grabbed her wrapper, tied it around her chest, and stepped out into the cold night. The compound was still. The moonlight spilled over the row of dustbins near the gate, casting long shadows on the ground. The crying grew louder as she approached. It was coming from one of the bins. Her breath caught in her throat. Hands trembling, she reached for the lid of her own dustbin, the old rusty one she had been meaning to replace. When she lifted it, a foul smell hit her nose, but underneath it, a small black nylon bag. It moved. She dropped the lid with a loud clatter and jumped back, her heart racing. Slowly, she forced herself to open the nylon. Inside, a newborn baby, naked, covered in blood and dirt, the umbilical cord still attached. For a moment, Madame Chica couldn't breathe. The baby's tiny arms flailed weakly, the cries now faint, as though the little life inside was slipping away. Her first thought was to scream, to wake the compound, but another thought stopped her. If she called them, the gossipers would gather, and by morning, the story would be everywhere. They might even blame her, say she was doing ritual or trying to steal someone's child. She looked at the baby again, fragile, abandoned, unwanted. And something inside her broke. She reached in, lifted the little one against her chest, and wrapped her in her wrapper, feeling the tiny heartbeat against her skin. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was not just an accident. This was a night meant to change everything. Chica shut the door behind her, her hands trembling as she clutched the tiny bundle. The baby's skin was soft but cold, and the faint cries tugged at her heart like a hook pulling on a rope. She stepped into the bedroom and gently shook Sunday. "Sunday, Sunday, wake up." He groaned, rolling over. "Chica, what is it?" This night is too short already. But when his eyes opened and landed on the small figure in her arms, he shot upright, like Ford poured water on him. "What is this?" he asked sharply. "Where did you get a baby from at this time?" Chica's lips trembled. "It was in the dustbin," she said, her voice breaking. "Sunday, somebody threw this child away." Sunday's jaw fell slightly. "Dustbin. Are you sure the child is alive?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, she's breathing. She's just weak. I heard the cry. I thought it was a cat, but when I went closer, tears pooled in her eyes." "Sunday, who would do such a thing? Who throws away a baby?" Sunday ran his hand over her head, baffled. "Chica, this is trouble, oh. We can't just don't say it," she cut in firmly. "We can't leave her there. At least not tonight. Please, let me clean her up." Without waiting for his reply, she hurried to the small table in the corner. She fetched warm water in a basin, laid the baby gently on an old towel, and began wiping the grime off her tiny body. Her hands moved with care, her heart pounding at every small cough or whimper. She wrapped her in Sunday's old mechanic overalls, the only warm thing within reach, before preparing a little tin of milk. Sunday stood watching her for a long moment, scratching his chin. "Chica, you know this matter will attract attention. You didn't hear how loud the cry was? People will soon start asking questions." She ignored him, rocking the child as her small mouth latched onto the bottle. Her breathing softened and his eyelids fluttered shut. By morning, the compound was buzzing. It started with one curious neighbor, Mama Aphioma, who claimed she heard the cry of a strange baby around midnight. Before long, 2 more women had gathered in front of Chica's door, whispering and peeping through the curtain gaps. "Where's she suddenly carry-peeking from?" Mama Ibira muttered loudly enough for Chica to hear. "Don't tell me she finally bought one to pretend she born it." "I won't be surprised," Mama Aphioma replied, smirking. After all, her belly no fit carry since. Desperation can make a woman do anything. Chica's hands shook as she stirred the morning stew, but she kept quiet. Sunday, however, flung the door open and barked, "If you people don't have work, go and find one. Not everyone is like you, waiting to sniff gossip." They hissed and walked off, but the murmurs only grew louder in the compound. 2 days later, trouble arrived. A police van stopped right outside their gate. 3 officers stepped out, led by a stern-faced sergeant. "Who is Madame Chica?" he asked. Chica stepped forward nervously. "I am. You're under investigation for suspected child theft," the sergeant said flatly. "Neighbors reported you found with a baby you cannot account for. You and your husband will come with us." Chica's knees weakened. "But I didn't steal her." I found her, save it for the station. The officer cut in. Sunday put his arm protectively around her, but the neighbors were already gathered like vultures. Mama Ebere shouted. I told you all. She bought the baby. I knew it. They were taken to the station, where hours of questioning followed. The officers demanded proof of her story, proof she didn't have. No one had seen her pick up the baby except God himself. Luckily, after much pleading, the police agreed to release them temporarily on the condition they reported back in 3 days with any new information about the child's origin. From that day, Chika became a target. The same women who once mocked her now gossiped daily, adding new layers to the story. That she planned to use the baby for rituals, that her jollof rice had started tasting strange since the baby arrived, that she was hiding something about the child's real parents. But slowly, strange hints began to surface. Mama Afioma's teenage daughter let slip that she'd seen a certain young lady from the next street, Amara, creeping toward the Dustbin area, late at night, days before the baby was found. Amara, who had mysteriously disappeared for 2 months, returned the same week the baby arrived. When Chika heard this, her heart skipped. Could it be Amara's child? But if so, why abandon it? 2 months passed, and Chika cared for the child like her own. She named her Chimamanda. Then, one humid afternoon, as she fed her mashed yam in the shade, just when the baby had started smiling and responding to Chika's voice, a young woman she had never seen walked up to her. She was thin, with tired eyes, and her wrapper was loosely tied as though she had rushed out of her house. This is my daughter, she said firmly, her voice trembling with a mix of desperation and authority. Her name is Ifunanya. Give her to me. Chika froze. She had been rocking the baby moments earlier and humming lullabies. She felt her grip tighten unconsciously. Sunday stepped forward. Wait, you said this is your baby? How did she end up in our dustbin in the middle of the night? The woman's eyes darted left and right, avoiding his gaze. It's a long story, she muttered. I was sick. Someone must have taken her from me. Chika studied her face. The woman didn't look happy to see the baby. There was no tearful reunion, no joyful exclamation, just an intense focus on taking the child away. Something felt wrong. How old is she? Chika asked softly. The woman hesitated. 8 months. Chika's heart skipped. She and Sunday had taken the baby to the clinic. She was barely 3 months old when they found her. Now she was just about 5 months. This woman didn't even know her child's age. Chika and Sunday exchanged a glance. The story didn't sit right. They both remembered the strict bail condition from the police. Report any new information about the baby's origin immediately. Chika swallowed hard. Wait here, she said, then went inside to fetch her phone. She dialed the number of the officer who had handled their case. Within 20 minutes, 2 policemen arrived. The entire compound began to gather again, whispering and peeping from doorways. At the station, the woman repeated her claim, but every detail of her story was shaky. She couldn't produce any birth records, no photos, no witnesses. When asked who the father was, she avoided the question completely. Finally, the officer sighed. This matter will have to go through social welfare, he said, until we confirm your identity and your relationship to the child. The baby will remain in their custody. Chika's chest tightened as she reluctantly handed over the little girl. Chimamanda's tiny hands reached for her, crying, and the sound tore through her heart like glass. But as the woman was led out of the station, Chika noticed something, a gold chain hanging loosely from her neck. It had a small, engraved pendant, and Chika was almost certain she had seen that exact chain before. And it wasn't on a stranger. That night, Chika couldn't sleep. She lay on her side, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily. Sunday was snoring softly beside her, but her mind was racing. That chain, the little gold chain with the oval-shaped pendant, she had seen it before about 6 months ago on the neck of a woman who came to Mama Esther's shop to buy pepper and dry fish. The woman was in a tinted car and didn't come down, she only rolled down her window halfway. But even in that short glance, Chica remembered the way the pendant shimmered in the sun. Back then, Mama Esther had whispered that the woman was from the wealthy Okonkwo family, the one with a sprawling mansion at the edge of town. Everyone in the area knew that family was different. Some said they were deep in politics, others said they were into strange rituals. Chica sat up in bed, her skin prickling. Could it be that this so-called mother was connected to them? And if so, why was their baby in a dustbin? By morning, she was restless. She convinced Sunday they needed to just pass by the Okonkwo mansion. They borrowed Sunday's cousin's motorcycle and rode there, parking at a distance so they wouldn't be noticed. The tall iron gate was shut, but from where they stood, Chica could see people moving inside, men in dark clothes, carrying boxes into the house. And just as they were about to leave, a sleek black sub pulled up. The thin woman from yesterday stepped out. But this time her tired wrapper and dusty feet were gone. She was wearing a fitted gown, high heels, and makeup so heavy it made her look like another person entirely. Chica's heart thudded. Sunday she lied to us, she whispered. She's not some struggling mother. She's connected to these people. Before Sunday could respond, the woman's eyes scanned the street. For a split second, they locked eyes with Chica. The woman froze, then quickly slipped into the compound. "Let's go before we get into trouble," Sunday muttered, pulling Chica away. But as they mounted the motorcycle, Chica felt a strange chill. Somehow she knew this wasn't just about a missing baby. There was a bigger, darker truth hiding in the shadows, and she wasn't sure if finding it would save her or destroy her. By the time Chica and Sunday got home, her hands were still shaking. She poured herself a cup of gari, added water, and stared at it without drinking. Sunday was pacing. "Chica, you saw the way that woman looked at us. That was not a friendly look. That was a keep quiet or else kind of look," he said, lowering his voice even though they were alone. Chica pushed the cup aside. "Sunday, this is more than we thought. The woman who came to our house yesterday pretended to be poor, like someone desperate to get her baby back. But I swear on my mother's grave I saw her months ago in a tinted car wearing that same gold chain. And the driver that day wore the same uniform as those men we saw at the mansion." "You mean those security guys in black?" "Yes. It's too much of a coincidence. How can a woman like that just lose her baby and not even be able to explain how the child ended up in a dustbin? I feel like we've walked into something we shouldn't have touched." Sunday sighed and sat down. "Chica, remember what the police told us if we find anything about the baby. We must tell them immediately. That's the only reason they granted us bail. If they find out we're investigating on our own, we'll be in trouble again." Chica knew he was right, but there was a stubbornness in her that wouldn't let go. She couldn't stop thinking about the way the woman's eyes had hardened when she saw them outside the mansion. That night, she tossed and turned. At one point, she thought she heard footsteps outside their window. She sat up, straining her ears, but the sound faded away. Eventually, she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, as she stepped outside to sweep the compound, her broom froze midair. There was a small brown envelope lying just inside the gate. She looked around, no one in sight. She picked it up, her heart pounding, and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with neat, blocky handwriting. "If you love your life, stop asking questions about the baby. Forget you ever saw her. This is your first and last warning." Chica's stomach dropped. She clutched the paper, looking around again. But the street was empty except for Mama Ejioma selling a kara at the junction. Sunday found her still holding the note. "What's that?" he asked. She showed him. and his face turned pale. "This is what I was afraid of," he muttered. "Chica, they're watching us. They know where we live." But Chica's fear quickly hardened into resolve. "Sunday, don't you get it? The fact that they're warning us means they have something to hide. If we back off now, we may never know what really happened to that child." Sunday placed a hand over his face. "And if we keep digging, we might end up in that same dustbin." Chica didn't reply. But in her heart, she knew this warning had only made her more determined. What she didn't know was that before the week ended, another warning would arrive. And this one would not be written on paper. And just before the week ended, another warning arrived, but this time it wasn't on paper. It was early evening. Sunday was walking home from his mechanic workshop when he noticed something strange. A small clay pot sat in the middle of their doorstep, covered with a black cloth. Flies buzzed around it. He bent down to lift it, but Mama Chindu screamed from across the street, "Don't touch it. That's juju." They called a local pastor, who came and prayed over the pot, before carefully removing the cloth. Inside was a dead pigeon, its wings broken, with a red bead tied around its neck. Beneath it was a small scrap of white cloth, the same fabric from Ivonia's baby dress. Chica's knees went weak. This is a warning," the pastor said gravely. "They're telling you the next thing they kill will not be a bird." That night, Sunday told Chica about something he had been hearing in town. There were whispers about the family in the big white mansion near the cemetery, the one no one dared to look at for too long. "They say no child born under certain conditions is allowed to live in that house," Sunday said. "They call it a curse. But others say it's not a curse at all. It's something darker." Through bits and pieces of gossip, the truth became clear. The curse was just a cover-up for a ritual tied to the cemetery. Every few years, a baby was taken there at midnight, offered in a sacrifice the family believed would protect their wealth and power. Ivoninia was meant to be the next offering, but someone in that house, a servant with a conscience, couldn't go through with it. On the night of the ritual, instead of carrying the baby to the cemetery, the servant quietly left her in the dustbin, praying she would be found by someone with a good heart. Now the family had realized she was still alive, and they wanted her back. Before they could decide what to do, a young woman with a soft voice visited them. She spoke softly. "I told them not to do this." They turned sharply. A young woman stood there, soaked from the drizzle. She kept glancing over her shoulder, like someone who had been followed. "My name is Kizaram," she whispered. "I was a servant in their house." She told them the curse everyone whispered about was never real. It was a cover for something far darker. The rich family by the cemetery was deep in ritual practices, using human life to renew their wealth. The baby found in the dustbin had not been abandoned out of shame or poverty. She was meant to be taken straight to the graveyard for a midnight sacrifice that would feed the spirits tied to the family's fortune. Chizaram said she had been the one ordered to deliver the baby that night. But when the family's attention turned elsewhere, she made a split-second choice. Instead of heading to the cemetery, she carried the baby out through the back gate and left her in a dustbin in a busy street, praying someone else would find her. "You must understand," she said, trembling, "they will not stop until they get her back. And now, because you reported finding her, they see you as a threat to their secret." Sunday studied her sharply. "If you really wanted to protect the child, why are you here now? Why not go to the police?" Chizaram looked down. "Because the police will not protect me from them. Some of their people work with the family. I came to warn you before it's too late." But as she spoke, Sunday noticed something, the way her eyes darted around the compound, as though searching for something, or someone. That night, long after she left, Sunday whispered to Chica she could be telling the truth, or she could be sent to see what we know. 3 days later, Chica went to the local welfare center to check on the child. She was halfway across the courtyard when she froze. A tall, elegant woman in a grey skirt suit was walking out, holding the baby in her arms. A junior officer walked beside her, carrying a small bag. Chica's heart skipped. "Excuse me, where are you taking the child?" she asked. The woman turned with a stiff smile. "Social welfare transfer order, madam. We're moving her to the state headquarters for safety." She produced a folder with neatly stamped documents, too neat, too perfect. But as Chica's eyes scanned them, she saw something that made her stomach churn. Tied around the woman's wrist was the same black thread she had seen wrapped around the clay pot at the dump site. Chica stepped back. "That thread, where did you get it?" The woman's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she covered it. "You're mistaken. Please, don't interfere." Chica didn't wait. She ran inside to find the officer in charge. But to her shock, the police chief himself was already at the gate, waving the woman through without checking her papers. That night, neither Chica nor Sunday could sleep. Something about the woman's cold eyes haunted Chica's thoughts. Around 2 a.m. she heard it faint, rhythmic drumming in the distance. Sunday sat up too. "You hear it too." They stepped outside, following the sound through the narrow back roads until they reached the cemetery. Through the shadows, they saw them hooded figures circling a fresh grave, their voices rising and falling in eerie chants. The beat of the drum seemed to pull the air itself toward them. And then, in the pauses between chants, they heard the baby's name being repeated. Sunday grabbed Chica's hand and pulled her back before they were spotted. "They've already taken her," he said through gritted teeth. That woman, she wasn't welfare. She was one of them. The next day, Sunday stormed into the station, demanding answers. But the chief sat behind his desk, calm, almost smug. "Mr. Sunday, I advise you and your wife to stay out of matters that don't concern you," he said, leaning back in his chair. "We've handled the child's case. No further questions." Sunday's voice shook. "Handled. You let her be taken for a ritual." The chief leaned forward. "Careful what you say, or I'll have you both arrested for obstructing a police investigation. This is my town, and I decide what's a crime here." That night, Sunday told Chica everything. "He's one of them, Chica. We can't go to the police anymore. We're on our own now." Days later, in the dim back room of a small palm wine shop, an elderly woman entered, glancing over her shoulder before speaking. Her voice trembled. "I was a cook in that evil mansion." Chica's eyes widened. Sunday leaned forward. The woman explained everything. The curse was a lie, invented decades ago by the family to cover the disappearances of children. Every cursed child was taken to the graveyard for midnight rituals to renew the family's wealth. The police chief himself was paid to protect them. The baby Chica found was meant to be sacrificed that same night. Tears rolled down Chica's cheeks. So, all this time it wasn't spirits. It was just wickedness. The woman nodded, her hands shaking. "If you want proof, follow them tonight. They will try again." Armed with the information, Sunday called a trusted friend in the state anti-cult squad men, who worked outside the local police's reach. At 11:47 p.m., Chica and Sunday crouched in the shadows near the old colonial mansion on the edge of town. The moon was full, casting silver light on the crumbling walls. Through a crack in the wooden fence, they saw hooded figures carrying torches, moving in a slow, eerie procession toward the graveyard behind the mansion. Chica's heart pounded. "Sunday, that's them." The squad lay in wait, surrounding the area in silence. At exactly midnight, the ceremony began. Drums, chanting, and the smell of burning herbs. In the center of the ritual circle, a small figure lay bound on a mat. The leader, a tall man in deep red robes, raised a dagger to the sky. We renew our covenant. Bang. A gunshot cracked the night. Chaos exploded. Officers in black stormed the clearing, shouting commands. Hooded figures scattered like frightened crows. 2 were tackled to the ground. Another tried to flee, but was caught at the gate. The red-robed leader turned to run and the hood fell back, revealing the face of the police chief. His eyes went wide when he saw Chica watching from behind an officer. You should have stayed out of this, he spat. By sunrise, the mansion was sealed off. The baby from the ritual was rescued and taken to safety. The former cook, protected by the squad, gave her statement on national television. The country erupted in outrage. The rich family was charged with multiple counts of ritual murder and kidnapping. The police chief was stripped of his rank and sent to maximum security prison. Years of buried cases were reopened. Reporters filled the streets, and the story dominated headlines for weeks. 2 months later, after court hearings and welfare investigations, the State Welfare Board called Sunday and Chica to the office. The officers commended them for their courage and persistence in helping expose the truth. Then they presented a document, an official adoption paper. "This child needs a family," the welfare officer said with a warm smile. "And from the look of things, she already has one." Chica and Sunday stood in the state welfare office, signing papers with trembling hands. The official smiled at them. "Congratulations, she's yours now." Officially. Chica turned to see the little girl, now healthier, sitting on Sunday's lap and playing with his beard. For the first time in weeks, she felt peace. Sunday looked at his wife. "From a dustbin to our home. God truly writes his own stories." Chica smiled through tears. "She's ours, and no one will ever hurt her again." And every evening, when the compound women sat outside to gossip, their eyes always softened when they saw Chimamanda in Chica's arms. The same mouths that once accused her now blessed her. Because sometimes, from the dustbin of life, God himself can bring forth a treasure. Truth will always overcome lies. No matter how carefully evil is hidden, the truth has a way of coming to light. Courage is contagious. Sunday and Chica's refusal to stay silent encouraged others to speak up, leading to justice. Kindness can change destiny. The servant's decision to save the child altered the course of many lives for the better. Never judge without knowing the full story. The same neighbors who once accused Chica later blessed her. Family is built on love, not just blood. Adoption made Sunday and Chica parents in the true sense. Evil often hides behind respectability. Chief Nuka's wealth and public image masked his crimes. Every child deserves a chance at life. Even one act of compassion can give a child hope for a brighter future. How many curses in our communities are actually human wickedness hiding behind fear? If the servant hadn't acted that night, would anyone have known the truth? How many lives could change if more people dared to protect the innocent, even at personal risk? Do we treat orphans and abandoned children as burdens or as gifts waiting for love? How quick are we to judge others without knowing what they are going through? Thank you so much for watching this story to the end. We hope it touched your heart, made you think, and kept you entertained. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe so more people can join our storytelling family. And remember, we have so many more thrilling, emotional and unforgettable stories coming your way. We remain Delia Storytime on all platforms, bringing you the best stories every time. Bye for now and see you in the next story.